Let's do this. Hey, welcome back, everybody. It is Coffee with Cagnetta, and I am very honored to have David Epstein with us. He is a serial entrepreneur, investor, sports team owner. I mean, you've done a lot of things in your past. Welcome, David. Let's start at the beginning. I mean, you went to the University of Miami?
I actually didn't go to the University of Miami.
Just very involved.
No, I went across town. I couldn't afford the University of Miami, so I had to go where it was a little bit more in my budget. But
That's funny.
yeah, no, I've done a lot of things. Not bad for a guy who's still 30.
Yeah, exactly. We were just talking about that.
Exactly.
We're like 30 times 2. So talk about how you graduated and eventually how'd you get into precision?
Well, I was at the time, as I mentioned, I was going across town to FIU,
Right.
and didn't have any real spending money, so I needed to work.
Mm.
And I came across a guy through a friend who was in the printing graphics business, and he needed a best word I can describe as a gopher, just somebody that would do things for him, whether it was running errands or working inside of his office and just doing things. But he was willing to pay, which was really my only criteria at the point, was could you afford to pay me anything? So I started working for him as a fellow named Doug Siegel, and he started to grow his graphics business. I was still going to school at the time, so he was very flexible with me, which was great. And one of his biggest clients was Florida Power and Light.
Oh.
And Florida Power and Light came to him and said, "Hey, you're doing all this print production for us and a bunch of things, and we have this problem. We can't do our own fulfillment. Can you do it for us?" And he effectively said, "No, that's not what I do." And I was there, and there was another guy there, and we said, "Well, hold on, put up the 5 fingers for a timeout." We said, "We could do this and start a business." And he said, "Well, if you guys want to take it and run with it." And that was a company born called Florida Fulfillment back in the day in the early 80s. And we started to grow it. I started to go to school more at night and on Saturdays just to finish up to get my degree so I could check that box.
Right.
But we started to grow the business. And then within about a year, Doug, unfortunately, he and his brother were both hemophiliacs in the early 80s, and they both contracted AIDS and passed away in the so it was sad, but when he was getting sick, he wanted to sell the business. He hadn't paid me enough for me to be able to afford to buy his business. So, connected with a fellow named Mark Gordon, who became my partner back in 1983. And together with him principally putting up a lot of the capital and being the majority investor, bought Florida Fulfillment at the time. And he and I just got along great. We're still partners today in businesses. So it's more than a few minutes later that we're still partners. But the company just kind of grew from there. And we grew it into kind of a big CX customer experience company. And obviously the story, most people know it. We took it public in the mid-90s. It was pretty successful.
Yeah.
And then we sold it in 2000 to IAC and to Barry Diller. And I stayed on for a few years for a variety of reasons. When I tell people the variety of reasons, when I start with number one, the rest don't really matter. And that was I was contractually obligated to. So the other reasons are really irrelevant. But I was kind of curious. I'd never worked for anybody or a big corporation. And it was a tremendous experience. It was a lot of fun right up until when it wasn't fun anymore. And then I left. But and at that same time, myself and a few guys had already purchased the Florida Panthers Hockey Club in 2001. And I had a variety of other business interests that I was involved with. So I just continued to focus on that, which was terrific. And then I always kept in touch with all the guys that we built PRC with. It was a very, as I say, it's kind of like, these were our band of brothers for what it was, in business. And we decided to take another run at it. We started another company in 2009 called C3, Customer Contact Channels. And the 6 guys around a conference room table, and the only thing we decided for sure was that we were not going to start this and greenfield it, that we were going to acquire something. So naturally, with that mandate, we did the exact opposite, and we greenfielded it. Didn't acquire anything because we couldn't find the right kind of asset to buy. So we were 6 guys around a conference room table in early 2010. And within a couple of years, we had grown it to a multinational company. We employed about 10,000 people. We had about, at that time, a couple hundred million of revenue. Grew it very quickly. Continued to grow that, and then 2016, it was a kind of a Godfather type of thing. Maybe not an offer you can't refuse, but an offer you shouldn't refuse.
Right.
And so we sold to a PE firm out of Asia, and there at that time I didn't stay on for any given amount of time. I kind of left pretty quickly, and started working on a bunch of other things. I've been, as you mentioned, the University of Miami, been on that board for over 20 years, for
Wow.
22 years now, and spent about 11 years as chair of athletics, which was a interesting venture. They think because you owned a part of a sports team in the Florida Panthers that applied to intercollegiate athletics. So, but I went on a very quick learning curve, and I had some great mentors along the way down there at the university, including Paul D, who was the
Yeah,
athletic director
sure.
down there. And so learned a lot, and had a lot of great experiences. And I still am on the board, the executive board of the university, and on the health board. And so it's been a great experience. Even though I didn't go there, my dad actually went there.
Oh, really?
Yeah, back in the 50s. So I think he went there more for the sun, the pool, and the girls,
Right.
but
Right.
he did go.
What was it called? Sunshine U?
Suntan U.
Suntan U.
And we are very far from that at this point.
No, it's a behemoth. I mean, you were talking a little bit about the athletic program. I mean, that's a business.
Sure.
I mean, was it a business when you got involved like that? I mean, it was certainly they were huge. I mean, baseball, football, basketball,
Mhm.
huge.
I mean, it's interesting. I think intercollegiate athletics, obviously, in the last few years, has changed immensely, right? It looks nothing like it used to look like. And I worked with guys where we saw a lot of this coming years ago and what would happen. I would say that intercollegiate athletics has always been a business, but it was never a business first. It was always academics first.
Right.
And I'm not suggesting that it's still not, but the transfer portal and the NIL world has certainly changed the shape of all of that. And so it's become a very dynamic business. And as I've said, with all the different changes, particularly around name, image, and likeness, the NIL world, I said this years ago. Every state has different rules, so it makes an uneven playing field, literal playing field, based on how you can do recruiting. I said, there's good news and bad news. The good news is eventually Congress will get involved and it'll be dealt with at a federal level. The bad news is Congress will get involved and it'll be dealt with at a federal level. And I think that is coming this way, but it's a big
It
business.
sort of has to. I mean, it's a big business. Obviously, University of Miami, they build massive facilities to attract top talent, and that top talent is somewhat of a marketing thing, I guess. I mean, for these universities, they want to be out there. They want to be on TV every weekend.
Mhm. There's no question that it's very good for universities when you have a winning program, less good when it's not winning.
Right.
The University of Miami, I feel very fortunate to be part of the university because we invest a significant amount of back into athletics and the academics of athletics too. So,
Yeah.
I mean, we have one of the highest graduation success rates in the country. We're in the top 10 every year.
Wow.
And some of our athletic programs were number one or number two. So we pay particular attention on the academic side because we think that that's a real important element. You need to graduate with more than just being able to, because not everybody's going to play, in the case of football, on Sundays, right?
Right.
So we want to make sure that young student athletes have the the talent, but they also have the academic skills to succeed in life. And that's a real important. And we take that at the board level and at the administration level. That's taken very serious.
Yeah. And University of Miami, known for so many more things than athletics. Obviously, the law school's fantastic.
Sure.
The medical school's fantastic.
Yeah.
Their affiliation with the hospitals. I mean,
Well, the health system has been in enormous shining bright part of the university. We've grown that very significantly over the last 7 to 10 years. The Miller School of Medicine is continuously becoming a top top program in the country, if not the world, um, for medicine, School of Medicine. And we continue to, like I said, we make significant investments. I mean, very significant investments into infrastructure, into top talent, into recruiting people who are a part of the national academies and science that can elevate the research that we do. So, and we have enjoyed a good reputation as a result of it.
Well, speaking of reputations, your involvement with the Panthers couldn't have a better reputation this year than winning the Stanley Cup.
Yeah, I mean, that would have been great in 2013, but, I sometimes joke and say that the blueprint for this team was drawn up 10 years ago when we still owned the team, but,
Right,
obviously, that's just not true. The Panthers have done great. The new ownership and the Violas and
right,
people that are running the organization there have done a tremendous job. The recruiting, the talent acquisition for the product that's going on the ice and the way that this team plays. I've watched a lot of hockey, obviously over a long
sure.
period of time. I think they have a tremendous team that should in a tremendous organization that should do well for a while.
But you were involved with the NHL. It wasn't so good on every level for some teams. I mean, some teams were actually having a really rough time making
A
it.
lot of teams. So 2/3 of the league was struggling financially. I
Right,
mean, it was a question of how much capital you have that you're willing to continue to put in, and hope that the appreciation outpaced.
right.
But the big difference with the NHL versus the NFL, even NBA and MLB, was the television, right? That's where all the money comes from.
Right.
So the NFL enjoys these incredible deals now, not just with the broadcast, but with the streaming services as well. The NBA is in that action as well. MLB continues to, even though there's a lot more localized opportunities with the MLB,
Right.
um, but NHL is now starting to get some of that in the television deals that they have. So it's an interesting time. I think it's good for the league. I think it's great for fans.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, it's great. It's funny. It's not funny. I mean, it's funny to watch the money follow, right? So, I I, I do a little segment on ESPN, West Palm about business and sports, and watching the private equity not only invest in the four major sports that you talked about, but speculating on a lot
oh, sure.
more, smaller sports like, Tiger's new,
Oh, the
golf
league up there,
golf
the,
league
the
up there, which
simulator.
I haven't been yet. They invited me to go up. I haven't been up there yet.
Yeah, I was invited when they were doing this. It was on TV maybe a month ago,
Right.
and I was invited, but I was out of town. I couldn't go, but I'm interested as a guy who likes to play golf. I was interested in
Yeah,
seeing it.
no,
So
it's pretty interesting. And of course, women's sports are now coming up
absolutely.
and you're watching that, do
Well,
well.
you have, I mean, for a long time when we're relatively the same age, when we
Yes.
were growing up, it was really about baseball and football and basketball.
Right.
Basketball probably even to a lesser extent, but basketball
Right.
and hockey. And now look, you have look at the Mosses here in town, right? What they're doing with
Yeah.
Inter Miami, right? And I'm good friends with Jose Moss, and they've done an incredible job in not just because they brought Messi in, but because they're just doing a really, really good job. And soccer's having a moment because it's such an international phenomenon. I think part of the reason that sports continues to change is that our world is smaller now because streaming services and the boundaries of geography have made it so that you can watch. I know a lot of people who are huge English Premier League
Yep.
soccer fans,
Yep.
and they'll say, "Who's your favorite team?" And I said, "Tell me who yours is first, and I'll then repeat that name to you because I don't follow it that often."
Right.
But there's a lot of, I mean, it's just become wildly popular here, and that wasn't. I don't think Well, I'll speak for myself. When I was younger, I don't think anybody even knew what the English Premier League was. That were
No,
my circle
I
of
didn't
friends.
certainly
Yeah, no.
didn't know. I knew
So
there was international soccer.
yeah,
I lived in New Jersey. We had the Cosmos for a little while.
yeah.
So we had, Franz Beckenbauer come in, Pele come
Pele
in
would
for
come to
his
town. Yeah,
Giorgio Canaglia. Like
yeah,
we had like some international stars that you knew played overseas that were huge stars that were drawing people to New York. And, you always wonder like if you're ahead of the curve of some of these things, and you're seeing
right.
that, you know, people are, I think, like you said, the streaming services have changed the landscape of the ability to have money to promote these things.
That's right. That's right. And access now. Everybody
Right.
has access. We watch on our phones.
It's
So we
long.
don't even have to be home to watch anymore. We can watch from, we can watch from 35,000 feet. We can watch from, being out to dinner. If you're with your wife, it's not a great idea to be doing that, but
It's funny, I go out to dinner with my father-in-law, and half the time he and I are watching
yeah,
TV.
no,
We're watching some
you're
game.
watching on your phone something that's happening, right?
Right, right,
Because you
right.
can do that. And so that makes the landscape of sports, I think, different.
So, let's talk about business in
Sure.
general. I mean, you have your hands into a lot of different things, and South Florida is a pretty dynamic place
Hmm.
these days, and it always has been, but, what are you seeing out there? What are you involved in? I mean, yeah, I know healthcare, I know you're involved in
Yeah.
marketing, what else?
Well, I've been part of the team over at HIG Capital since
Right,
2019. So I'm a senior advisor for them, which really means when there's something that fits my core background and I can help them, I kind of dive in and get deals or get involved at the board level on different activities with them. I see, South Florida, it's an interesting, if I just keep it local for a
right,
second, I think that we say it down in Miami, where it's a Miami moment. It's kind of being coined the Miami moment. But what you have now is you have very serious business minded people that are living in the community.
hmm,
30 years ago, that or 20 years ago, that wouldn't have been the case.
right,
And so now we have, you know, not just with Ken Griffin and Citadel and some of the others, but there's a lot of money and institutional money coming into town. And so when you have it in your own community, it rises the tide for everybody.
right,
So I think it's interesting right now. If you're in South Florida, I think whether it's technology or business services, there's some opportunities to grow your business here. When we were building PRC back in the 80s and 90s, there wasn't that many companies.
right,
The big you would know who they were outside of
right,
the cruise industry, right? You had Burger King and you had a couple of companies that were based down here,
right.
Ryder,
Wayne,
yeah, and then Wayne came along and was building,
Nation,
AutoNation
Alamo, and a
and
couple of
Mike Egan and Alamo. And
yep,
there wasn't that. I mean, relatively speaking, for a big metropolitan area, which this
it
MSA
was.
is, um, there wasn't that many big companies here.
No,
So
I always said that to people who are immigrating down here back at that time, there just wasn't a lot of $100,000 jobs. I
right,
mean, you either worked in healthcare or you tried to work for one of the big
right,
firms, but other than that, there wasn't like this business community
no,
that there is now.
no, and now there's a technology community
There's
too.
technology, there's a lot of construction,
Oh yeah,
obviously,
for sure,
you know.
absolutely.
So there's, just investments, across the board. And so I think one of the first places we met might have been on a plane flying to junior achievement.
Oh, okay.
I was
Yeah,
on that
that's right.
plane once.
Oh, sure, sure. That was Wayne's plane,
We
right?
were on Wayne's 737, I
Yeah.
think it was,
Yeah, his Boeing business jet. Yep.
and we jumped on it and I forget where we were going, but to a couple of JA. But
I
you've been involved with a lot of charities down here as well.
We've tried. My wife and I have tried to be involved with a lot of things so over a period of time, not just in, giving money, but trying to give our time.
Sure.
And so for many years she's been involved with Gilda's Club of South Florida. She was involved with that for many years and sat on the board there and helped them, you know, deal with their mission, which was pretty sensitive
No,
mission,
of
dealing with
course.
people dealing with cancer. And then we've been involved, as you mentioned, junior achievement, but we've been involved in a lot of other activities down here that have, are very worthy. One thing is, South Florida now has emerged as a giving community. Wasn't always that way. I think there's still room to go, but it wasn't always that way.
I always said, the money that was down here in South Florida came from elsewhere. So what we used to see, even at Junior Achievement, when I was on that board in United Way, is that somebody passes away, and all of a sudden they died here in South Florida, been here for 20 years, and they give all their money to the San
In
Diego's,
Chicago, or yeah,
Chicago,
right.
or
I know.
like
Yeah,
Cleveland or
right,
New York, wherever they were from.
right.
And I think, you grew up down here.
No, well, I
Yeah.
was in the first my kind of I was 17 when I came down.
Okay.
I'm from Connecticut, New York area
Okay.
originally.
Yeah. So we're seeing, and my wife grew up down here. That's why I said, and she's about our age. And so we're seeing the people who are native down here
Right.
now growing up, becoming successful, and hopefully the money's going to stay down here when
I
they're,
think it will. I
you know,
think it will, and, people start their families down here, so oftentimes the kids do stay down here, and there's
right.
ties to the community that are a little bit different now, so it's a opportunity for a lot of these very worthy causes to attract some good financial resources.
Yeah. And as you said, a lot of the kids are staying down here. So there's a lot more opportunities down here. We always give advice to the kids, and, we're seeing things like AI be out there. What do you see as some of the future things that people are getting involved in down here? And
I mean, I think engineering is still a big opportunity, whether it's, technical or it's programming or it's, data science. But the whole STEM opportunity is really, and we see it every day. Um, in the high tech companies, they're constantly looking for very qualified people,
right,
and they're willing to pay a lot of money. So if you're 20 years old or 19 years old and you're trying to figure out your major, I tell this to kids all the time because being at the university, right, we get a chance to interface with kids all the time. First follow your passion to be sure.
right,
But if you're looking for, where the big opportunities are, they're likely to be in the STEM community.
yeah.
And so, having said that, I think the first requisite though is follow what you're most passionate about.
And sometimes you have to be opportunistic. I mean, you just told your story,
Yeah,
how you stumbled
yeah,
into your first company. I stumbled into here 30 years ago as a customer,
right.
and they hired me as a salesperson, and I just stuck around long enough to buy the company. So, what you get, I think what I keep trying to tell young people is you just really need to get out there more.
Hmm.
I mean, it's a tough thing because people are behind their computers. They can stay in all day.
Right.
But getting out there, there's nothing.
Listen, when you and I were coming up in the business community, we would go to networking events,
Right.
right? They weren't virtual I mean, this is where you actually, for those younger people, that's where
Right.
you actually go out and meet people and you see that there's a three-dimensional world out there and
Right.
you interact and it's a different kind of interaction than it is either on a Zoom or certainly in texting formats or chat formats. In that interaction, I think there is a deficit of that in
Right.
younger adults coming into the workforce today. Look, we have a whole thing going on. One of my companies we have is a company. I mentioned the company C3 a while ago. We
Right.
have a company now called P3. We're not very creative with names, but it's a precision point partner. So we kept the DNA of our precision name, and we provide advisory services for businesses who are looking to deal with CX, looking to deal with outsourcing, looking to deal with a lot of those activities. And we have a particular expertise in things like healthcare and government and other industries. But we go out and we look at the business community and we say there's opportunities out there, and you have to kind of get out there and look for those opportunities and meet people. It's so we tell young people, LinkedIn is great. I'm a believer in LinkedIn to be
Yeah. Sure.
sure, right? But nothing replaces you and I. If we had been better at staying in touch from that
All right.
BBJ flight, I think we went to Indianapolis
Yeah.
actually. Now
I
that
think we did.
right, we would have a different kind of. So I think it's important for people to be, to start thinking about how to connect on some of my closest friends are people that I've worked with, right?
Right.
And I don't know that my kids will say the same thing. I don't know.
Yeah. I don't know. So, speaking of South Florida, one of the things we like to hear from the people who've lived down here for a long time. What are some of the favorite things you love to do down here? What are your favorite restaurants? What don't want to give
Well,
away, but you're a man of.
as soon as you start saying it, I don't know how many people listen to your podcast, then you can't get into your favorite
I know.
restaurant anymore, right? So, no,
People are always hesitant to give
no,
it up. So,
no, I don't. Um, you know what? What do I like to do down here? So for years we owned boats. Now the best thing that happened is I don't own a boat, but my business partner and closest friend actually still has a pretty good, nice boat that we go
Nice.
out on. So I like to do that. I play a lot of golf when I can. Oftentimes I'm asked, what are my hobbies? And I say I like to work, and they go, no, no, but what's your hobby? I go, I work. That's kind of my hobby, and that tells you something, which is probably question my mental stability at this point. But it's a situation where, um, for me, South Florida provides opportunities for outdoor activities,
Right.
and that's really where I like to go. And as far as my like favorite go-to restaurants, we actually my wife and I we don't go out that often.
There you go.
I spend a lot of time in New York, so we tend to go
Get to,
out there, but we don't go out that
do you
often.
hit some shows when you're up there?
We get some. My wife was a theater major, so
Oh, there you go.
and she followed up by actually as an actor and then teacher. So yes, she thinks she's dragging me, and I let her continue to think that, but I enjoy going. So,
Yeah, I do too. My daughter's a theater kid and
oh yeah,
living in Hell's Kitchen right now,
oh
and
nice.
working in and around the community up there.
How old is she?
She's turning 30, so
Mm-hmm.
it's about time to get a real job.
Yeah. I
But
have my daughter lives in Manhattan. She's 30, and she worked for years in the nonprofit world. She came up along with Hillary Clinton. She worked on
right,
the campaign and then went to the Clinton Foundation when Hillary didn't go to the White House. We that story.
yes.
And now she just stopped doing that. She went back to school for her master's. So
Oh, excellent.
nothing beats being, having a kid say, "I'm going to go back to school and here's the bill."
My daughter just got done with her. My other daughter just got done with her master's
Oh,
and
nice.
in museum studies, and now has decided to join my company to try to sell some businesses. Because,
Oh,
like you said, you follow your passion, but at
right.
some point you gotta make some.
Well,
She wants to make some money. So,
yeah, museum studies is my wife actually was getting her master's in museum studies.
oh,
So
there you go.
yeah, she's been on boards and stuff like that. So but yeah, it's always interesting when, well, you know what? That's why we have to continue to work hard,
That's
right?
why, I tell my wife and I said, "Not everybody is put on this earth to make money." I mean, some people make money,
Right,
and then other people are here to do other things,
right.
and very important things in our society. Taking care of people, doing arts, doing,
Oh, absolutely.
serving in the military, and some of us are entrepreneurs and we're here to
I
keep the
think that's
economy
the
going.
balance the way it should be, though.
Right.
I do
I
think
agree.
that's the way it should be. So we're in an interesting time at this particular moment. We'll
We
see how things go,
We we
but
are, and always have hope that, we'll always, as a community, come together. I watch our community come together, for a lot of different causes, and, I think when push comes to shove, hopefully we're gonna be here for each other. So,
yeah, I think that's right, though.
yeah,
I think that's right.
and I
That's
think we can help that. I mean, we continue to invest in people and companies and help grow them and, surround ourselves with, that's the community we wanna build, right?
right. Are you seeing a lot of activity right now within your business?
We're seeing a lot of M&A activity. The only thing is, right now there are questions. I have a couple of deals going on right now, and they're concerned, like, will the tariffs affect us, or
Hmm.
will, and then I'm also involved with a lot of nonprofits still, and they're worried about grant money and things like
Oh
that.
yeah,
So
yeah.
it's
That's
an interesting time. It is, you know,
yeah. Well, this is what makes boards and makes management have to figure out how to navigate through the times because government does change and priorities change. We have to figure out how to continue to thrive.
yeah, I think that's, and that's kind of a great way to kind of end this. I think, what I've watched you and watched other people is, um, we're kind of grinders. I mean, we'll figure it out. I
Right.
mean, you got to get into a company, and there's going to be tough times and there's going to be lean times, and you figure out a way.
You figure out a way. I say this all the time. Uh, Fail fast. That's my kind of, gonna something's gonna go wrong. Let's fail fast and move on and continue to be and show that kind of resilience and endurance. And I think South Florida, I actually think South Florida's business community is one of the most resilient business communities in the country. I believe that.
I do too.
So
I do too. We're very, very lucky to be down here, and but because population growth, it's always seems to be growing, and people are continuing to grow it. So there you go.
I hear the alarm going
Yeah,
off.
the
That
alarm
must
going
mean
off.
we've reached time at this
We've
point.
reached time, but David, thank you so much for
It
coming
was
in.
my
I
pleasure.
really
I'm glad we
appreciate
got
the
to sit down.
conversation.
We should do this, maybe not on air, but we should do this more
We
often.
should do this more often.
Okay,
Thanks.
great.
Nice to meet you. See you again.
No
All
worries.
right, everybody. Yes, Coffee with Cagnetta. Thank you, David, for coming in today. Really appreciate it. Amazing entrepreneur and obviously grown a lot of companies. And so we're going to have more people like this next time on Coffee with Cagnetta.